You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rebecca Weber, and this is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. And I'm so happy today to have with me Congressman Madison Cawthorn. He is an eighth-generation resident of North Carolina's 11th Congressional District. His ancestors served in Western North Carolina communities for over 200 years, including in the Revolutionary War. Representative Mark Meadows nominated Madison Cawthorn to the U.S. Naval Academy in 2014. However, his plans were derailed that year after he nearly died in a tragic automobile accident. It left him partially paralyzed and in a wheelchair. But this ordeal built his faith. It made him a fighter. It helped him appreciate every day, and it inspired him to help everyone he encounters to overcome whatever adversity they face in their daily lives. I think you're going to love hearing from him today. Today, he is a small businessman. He's a motivational speaker, and he challenges people across the nation to have faith, to work hard, and to play by the rules and pursue the American dream. A constitutional conservative, Madison is committed to defending the values of faith, family, and the freedoms that make America great. Cawthorn is the youngest member of Congress in modern history. Matter of fact, the previous modern-day House record holder was 29-year-old New York Democrat Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, Cawthorn successfully defeated Democrat Mo Davis in North Carolina's 11th Congressional District, and he fills the seat previously held by White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. So I'll be asking him how he did it, exactly how he won. He'll be with us in just a few short moments. But for you that are listening, I want to remind you, check out our website, amac.us. AMAC stands for the Association of Mature American Citizens. And you can find a lot of great information on our website at amac.us. Remember, AMAC fights for all Americans, especially those 50 and older, but you need not be 50 years old to join AMAC. So check out our website, and I'll be right back with you with Congressman Cawthorn. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, Congressman Madison Cawthorn. You are newly elected Republican to Congress. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rebecca, it's such an honor to get to be on with you. I really do appreciate you allowing me to have the platform to get to talk about myself. So let's jump right in.
Excellent. Well, it is a pleasure to have you on the show today. And I think some of our listeners might know you actually as the Pizza Man, because we saw a story when thousands of National Guard troops from several states had deployed to the U.S. Capitol to protect the inauguration. You heard that the National Guard troops had been relegated to the underbelly of the People's House. So tell us what you did when you heard about that.
Well, you know what? I was headed to a dinner with my chief of staff. It was a strategic dinner. We were talking about what plans for the upcoming week, what we were going to do. And then I got a text message from a friend, and he alerted me to what was going on. And to know that our servicemen and women who deserve nothing but the respect and the thanks of a grateful nation, people who were really being used as political props at this point, where had been relegated to go sleep underneath, at the People's House, as you said, when just days before the inauguration, Democrat and Republican congressmen and senators been shaking their hands, talking about how much they support them. But as soon as the inauguration was over, they said, "Okay, we're done with you all. The cameras are gone. You go get out of our house, go sleep in the garage or rest there." And that sickened me. I wanted to show them some Western North Carolina mountain hospitality. And so the fastest thing we could do that night is we called every Papa John's we could. We got as many pizzas made as we could. We loaded up our entire pickup truck and drove down there. And I'll tell you, I've never had so many best friends in a single place in my entire life. So I've got 5,000 best friends all over the country now.
That is wonderful. That's such a wonderful act of kindness, and we always encourage that. I love to hear those kinds of stories. And so we know the inauguration was just a few weeks ago. We still have 5,000 armed national troops there in D.C., I think until mid-March. Do you think that their presence is necessary? This is actually a question that we polled our members on, and our membership felt that, it was more of a unnecessary show, I guess you could say, a show of force by the Democrats designed to sort of maybe intimidate people who oppose them. Do you think that their presence is necessary there, or do you not really have much of an opinion on that? I know.
Rebecca, I've got a very strong opinion on that. I do not think your presence is necessary whatsoever. Now, these are National Guard troops. They're not active duty service members, women. So these people have families, homes. They have normal jobs that they go to every single week. And they normally go to training exercises a few weekends a month. But now they've been called away from their homes, been called away from their families, been called away from their work to go protect the Capitol from this threat that's out there. Now, obviously, what happened on January 6th was despicable and regrettable, and I denounce any form of violence. But, I hear the security reports every single day, and there's just no relevant threat that's really on the rise or coming that requires this much of an armed protection of the Capitol. And so, many of your members, as you said, probably think that this is a show of force designed for intimidation. But, I think it's much more Machiavellian what the Democrats are doing. I actually think it's all about a show of what they are saying the Trump era looks like. They're trying to say, oh, wow, we need armed guards, razor wire, we need walls, we need this kind of protection because the country is in such turmoil, it's so divided, the country is divided. I think we need to heal that partisan divide.
I couldn't agree with you more. There. And our members, too, they feel very strongly the same way.
Well, I think that should be one of our number one goals all across the board. But now that these National Guard troops are there, I believe, from an optic standpoint, as soon as Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi decide to send those National Guard troops home, then it'll look like the country's opened up again, that it's flourishing, everything's going well. It'll look like Joe Biden's the savior. When in reality, there was not much of a purpose for them to be there.
Well, thank you for sharing your perspective there. Talking about the division in our country, President Biden says that he wants Democrats and Republicans in Congress to work together. He wants to pass nearly a $2 trillion coronavirus relief bill as one of the first major bills in Congress. But it appears that there's really not been an attempt at bipartisanship. We saw that there were 10 Republican senators who visited the White House. It seemed to be more of a show, especially based on some of the comments that we heard from those Republicans. But what is your interpretation of how well Democrats and Republicans can work together on the coronavirus relief bill?
Well, I believe we can absolutely work together in a very strong way. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen. The Democrats are calling for unity. And I'll tell you, they do want unity. The unfortunate part is it's not the unity that I believe myself and many other Americans normally envision when we hear unity and bipartisanship. The form of unity that they're talking about is the absence of all resistance. This is why they're trying to kick me out of Congress. Why they're trying to kick Representative Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Mo Brooks, myself. They're trying to kick us all out of Congress because they believe in the Soviet style of unity, where you silence every single voice of dissent and you have no one who opposes you. So then you say, oh, look, everybody agrees. When in reality, I represent 730,000 people here in Western North Carolina. They absolutely do not agree with what is in the coronavirus relief bill that they're trying to pass, because right now it helps a lot of their corporate lobbyist donors that are inside of Washington, D.C. to the Democrat Party. But it doesn't help a lot of hardworking families and small businesses, which are struggling throughout these government-mandated shutdowns.
They sure are. Absolutely. Well, we're hoping that there's going to be some sort of common ground, because we do want to put the American people first, as you say, and that is most important. Speaking of the American people, I really want your opinion on this massive bill that we've been talking to our members a lot about. That is H.R. 1. Now, the bill H.R. 1 is known as the For the People's Act of 2019. It was introduced in the last Congress. It's over 600 pages. I've read through the bill, and I, as an American citizen, I am very, very concerned. The Democrats have vowed to make this their number one priority bill to push through Congress. When I read the bill, Congressman, it seemed to me that it was like a wish list for a party that wants to control elections and keep people who are against sort of the ideology of the left, keep them quiet. So there's two things here that concern me in H.R. 1. That is the threat to the integrity of our elections as well as privacy issues. Some of the things that I read, for example, nationwide online voter registration with minimal verification requirements. I mean, we saw what happened, and we know that there's been, our elections have been needed to be cleaned up for many, many years. This isn't something new. This is something that has been going on for a long time. So we don't want to loosen the restrictions. We don't want to allow mail-in ballots, mail-in voting, just free, nilly-willy and vote harvesting. What are your thoughts on H.R. 1, and why should the people listening here be concerned? If you think that they should be concerned, I'd love to hear your perspective on this bill.
Well, Rebecca, I'll tell you, there's not a lot that can be done in Washington, D.C. from a conservative perspective, aside from resisting what the Democrats are saying and offering a contrary point of view. Now, what the Democrats don't want is they don't want that contrary point of view. That's why they're pushing so hard to get H.R. 1 through. What I'm advocating for and what we're trying to do here in our state legislature is to try and fix this on the state level. Republicans control about 38 state legislatures all throughout the country. So we have the massive majority of the states that are controlled by Republican entities. And because of that, I believe we can secure our elections moving forward. And now you're trying to see in H.R. 1 that the number one policy position of the Democrats is not healthcare. It's not gun confiscation. It's not the Green New Deal. It is elections. All they care about is power, and they'll do anything to get it. And God help us if they ever do, because they want to silence all voices of dissent. Now, I'm a diehard conservative. I believe in the diversity of thought. And so, if Republicans come to power in the next 2 years and we take the House and the Senate back, as I believe we will, I'm not going to move to try and silence Democrats as they're trying to silence us, because I want people to be able to speak their mind. I believe it's a bedrock foundational principle of being an American. But for whatever reason, the Democrats don't believe that. And H.R. 1 says that loud and clear.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We do have a lot in common, Congressman. It is refreshing to hear this coming out of Washington, because AMAC, too, will be working to inform our members and also to push back on some of what we feel this is very bad for America. H.R. 1, it would institutionalize on a nationwide basis very controversial registration and voting procedures. And we had a global pandemic, which prompted many of those different ways in which the 2020 election occurred. But we've really got to get back to cleaning it up. I'm glad to hear from you that you do think that there's light at the end of the tunnel as it relates to election integrity. And very happy to hear that we can do a lot of work on the state level. So that is very uplifting. I want to hear a little bit about how you pulled off this surprise primary victory. I mean, there was a candidate who was backed by Donald Trump, and then you triumphed over Mo Davis. So exactly, can you share with us what accounted for your victory? How do you think you did it?
It's a great team. I called on all my best friends from all over the country that came from everywhere. We sat down and we knew that we were going to be an unconventional candidate. And so we knew we couldn't run just a normal conventional race. And so instead of just, trying to go out and run like a chicken with your head cut off and do as many events as you can and say the right things and wear the right clothes, we decided to make this all about local politics, all about people. And so we made this a very granular election. We decided to break this down into small numbers and say, find volunteers who would commit to saying, oh, yes, hey, you need to get 6 votes out of my neighborhood. I will provide those. And then once we started getting those, we started counting it off. And so by the time we got to the election day, one was in March 3rd, and then the next one was in a runoff in June 23rd. During that time, we just started, we worked backwards. We said, okay, if we need to have 339,000 votes on this day, how many votes do we need to secure every single day? And so we would have our volunteers making phone calls, going door to door. We would be doing events. People would be going out, getting people's name, figuring out where they live, getting their phone numbers. But then on election day, and although in this country we don't really have an election day anymore, it's more like an election month. We called every single one of our registered voters, the people who had said, I will vote for Madison. I believe in this American First agenda. I believe in this agenda that puts, dining room politics before Washington talking points. And because of that, we just made phone calls. We said, hey, you said that you would vote. I just want to remind you there's an election going on. It's a runoff. Would you mind going out and voting? And people realized, that I was a major Trump supporter, and they realized that, a lot of Washington politics were being played. So a lot of outside support was coming into our election. But the people of Western North Carolina wanted a local boy. They wanted someone who was going to go up there and fight for them in Washington, D.C. And that's exactly what we've been doing.
That is wonderful. I love to hear that. It sounds like you had a really smart team of people that were, knew exactly how to communicate well with your constituents. So that is great. I want to shift a moment and talk to you a little bit about these, the COVID-19 pandemic, and as a result, the government shutdowns and these mandates that are imposed. You mentioned earlier, small business is hurting in America, and people are just worried about, providing for their families, putting food on the table. And sadly, 2020 was a rough year, and it looks like 2021, it's going to take us a little bit of time before we see things begin to ease up. But I can't help but think that these government shutdowns have not really helped our economy. And when I look at the states, I'm in New York, for example, and I see the way New York has behaved. I don't think that these extreme measures are helpful. My mother lives in Florida, for example, and the way Florida is being handled with many, many more older people, right? And it seems like that they're doing something right. What are your thoughts on these shutdowns and mandates that are really stifling our economy?
Well, one, I think that everybody owes Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida a debt of gratitude. He's shown what every governor in this country should be doing. He has decided, instead of trying to use these draconian lockdowns to control people, he instead decided he wanted to lift people up. He wanted to give them the freedom to make their own decisions, to make an educated risk assessment for themselves, to understand, hey, this is a situation I can put myself into, and I'm okay here. He knew that he needed to protect the most vulnerable, which was the elderly community. And, Florida has our highest concentration of senior citizens in our country, yet they have one of the lowest death rates in the entire country. Where you're at in New York, it's darn right scary if you're over 60 years old and you're in a retirement home. The odds of you dying are much higher than if you were down in Florida. And so I think that these lockdowns that we've been seeing are not helpful. I understood in the very beginning when we needed 2 weeks to help our logistical operation get up to speed. So we have the right amount of PPE, we have the right amount of ICU beds, we have the right amount of ventilator capacity. But now, as we're moving on, coming into the end of this pandemic, I believe we've learned we've had a case study in Florida that opening up your state and allowing people to actually make money and having a roaring economy is the best way to get people back to their lives while still protecting.
I agree. Protecting the vulnerable is so important, but keeping the healthy and the young out of schools, and it really is just snowballing. And the measures that they're taking seem to be we're paying a high price. I don't think that it's the right way to go. And our members get really frustrated too, because they hear a lot of people say, stay home, don't go anywhere, while they're traveling, eating out, dining, getting the hair done, and that kind of stuff. So I think that I pray anyway that more of our states do follow Florida's lead, and we begin to see things ease up a little bit. I have a couple of more questions that I really want to get at. The first is the second impeachment. I just think that this is so terrible for America. We know that there was the second impeachment first triggered, I guess, at the end of January. And I believe the trial in the Senate is scheduled to start tomorrow. They're saying that Trump was the cause of the incitement of insurrection against the government and that he should be held responsible for that. Now, I was there the day of the rally, and it was a very peaceful, beautiful day. It was very patriotic, people of all ages, young people, families. I heard Trump's speech. In no way, shape, or form did that make me want to go up and storm the Capitol. So I can only tell you my personal experience was that absolutely this was not the case. Do you think that this is just going to, I think we need 18 Republicans that would vote in favor of impeachment. How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, one, I believe it's unconstitutional to impeach a private citizen. Rebecca, this means that if for whatever reason, the government stopped liking you, Nancy Pelosi didn't like you, she could then impeach you. Donald Trump is no longer a sitting president. Impeaching him doesn't make any sense, and it seems unconstitutional. So I hope and pray that our senators have the courage to follow people, like fighting against this very hard tooth and nail. Now, I believe, and I was there on January 6th as well. I don't believe Donald Trump incited this violence whatsoever. We found from security reports that this was done by a concerted effort from, really kind of anarchists and anti-government groups on both sides of the aisle, kind of the extremists on both sides, who plan to take action on.
I think I lost your sound there, Congressman.
I believe the second impeachment is unconstitutional. I believe that, Donald Trump did not incite violence on January 6th. I believe it was done by terrible, pathetic groups on both sides of the aisle, these anarchists, anti-government people. But I genuinely believe that, this second impeachment trial that's going on starting tomorrow, you're correct, is something that we need to resist as an American population. Because if we start allowing the government to come after private citizens, political affiliations, then who knows where that's going to end.
And that's going to lead me to my next question. And we just have a few more moments here. So, but this is a big one, and it's around censorship. We're seeing more and more. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm an optimist, and things don't really rattle me too easily. But the more that I'm seeing people, average people who hold strong conservative views censored on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the rest. We saw that Parler was completely just shut down. Censorship is a great concern to the American people. And I think that it is right for people to be concerned. I don't want to let fear control us. We shouldn't be afraid, but we ought to be concerned so that we can take certain steps and measures and educate people around us what the reality really is. As it relates to censorship, Congressman, what do you see happening in America, and what do you think can be done in Washington to ensure that Americans are afforded their First Amendment right, freedom of speech?
Not a conspiracy theorist, and people who are seeing this censorship happen, it's real life. This is not some fever pitch dream where you're saying, oh, the big brother's after me. It's true. Big Brother is after you. If you want to speak your mind, if you want to stand up against this woke mob and the progressive left, they're going to come after you. They're going to try and censor you. They're going to try and censor you. They're going to try and take you off your platform and not allow you to speak. I believe social media is the new town square. And if we allow government to start regulating what we can say in the town square, then we've got a major problem. Now, I don't think you should go out and intentionally try and offend people. But you know what? There is a cost for every liberty that we're given. With Second Amendment rights, you face the danger of gun violence. With the First Amendment rights, you face the danger of being offended. Now, that's not bad. If you are someone who gets offended easily, then you need to go toughen up. I understand that's going to offend people, but we need to have thicker skin to where we can have a conversation and communicate with one another in this country. I believe the reason for this partisan divide is people have just stopped wanting to have communication with people who have other political affiliations, to where you live in this echo chamber and you become an extremist, which obviously, I'm sure you can understand. It feels good to be an extremist. You can blame every single issue on your life on somebody else. But I believe in America, we need to get to a point where we're tough enough and mature enough to be able to sit across with somebody who has a disagreement with us, and let's have a conversation and a debate with words. Let's let our ideas be the iron that sharpens other iron.
Ah, that is great. And you are so inspiring to so many people. I love your message. And I want to talk quickly about healthcare in America. You actually sustained a spinal cord injury, and that had to have impacted your life and also exposed you to healthcare in America. I'm a huge believer that we still have the greatest, most innovative healthcare in the world. And people confuse healthcare with health insurance. But when we look at healthcare and America's innovation, the doctors, and the fact that people still come to this country for surgeries and procedures, we want to ensure that our healthcare is strengthened. Now, Democrats and Republicans are so divided on this issue when it relates to healthcare, because the Democrats would like government takeover of healthcare. They do not really are not big believers in the free system. They like the single payer plan. They're opposed to privately run healthcare plans, which really, in my opinion, competition is really what drives costs down for health insurance and innovation. I mean, that is what motivates people to innovate. Why do you support the free market approach?
Well, you know what? I feel like this is just going to be a quick echo. I agree with everything that you just stated. I do believe that we have the greatest healthcare in this country. You know, I'm a testament to that. I'm the prime example of a consumer of healthcare in our country. You know, I was near death. I was one of the most injured people to ever survive a car accident in the state of Florida. My doctors were incredible. The technology that we have available to us in this country is unparalleled. You won't find it anywhere else in the world. And it's because we have a pseudo free market system where people are allowed to innovate, where people are allowed to drive new creations that are life-saving technologies. But you're absolutely right. A lot of people do confuse health insurance with health care. But the number one problem I see going on in America, and I was faced with a crippling $3 million in medical debt when I came out of the hospital a year later after my accident. And the reason I believe we have such high costs is because, unlike our healthcare system, where we have doctors competing to be the best doctor in the world, we have innovation being encouraged, which will create better technologies. Our health insurers have a virtual monopoly. Here in North Carolina, Blue Cross Blue Shield controls all of the health insurance that happens in this state. Therefore, we have artificially high prices. So I believe we move more towards a free market system where we allow more health insurers to come into this country, then I believe we're going to see costs go down because they'll be competing for our dollars.
Congressman, you share that you are for congressional term limits. I know I'm shifting to a whole new question here, but we actually have an article that we've recently posted on term limits. This is something that I know that there's a lot of people for and against. Our members are slightly divided on the issue. For example, people say that setting term limits could increase congressional reliance on special interest groups. What is your opinion, though, on term limits? I mean, folks are saying, well, it's good when people get experience and they're there in Washington for a long time. That's good for the country. What do you think about term limits?
I'll tell you, we do need seasoned legislators. That makes sense to me. So these people who say you should only spend 2 or 4 years, I think that that's short-sighted. But I do believe that we need term limits, because if we have people who spend decades and decades in Washington, D.C., people like, Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell, they've both been in office for longer than I've been alive, which is hard to even fathom. They become so disconnected with the American people that they don't even speak the same. And so what I believe that we really need is we need term limits. But we also need term limits on the bureaucrats who exist in Washington, D.C. And I believe that what we need to do is reform the way that people raise money for our campaigns. I think you should only be able to raise money in the district that you're trying to represent. If you're running for governor of Florida against Ron DeSantis, which you'll definitely lose, I think that you should only be able to raise money in Florida. Or if you're running for Congress in Western North Carolina, you should only be able to raise money here. That way, the only special interest group that you answer to is the special interest group of the American people and the constituent that you serve. And so, I think you should be able to serve, maybe 5 or 6 terms, just 10 or 12 years. Gives you the time to get the experience, but it also makes sure that we don't have an entrenched political.
I really like that. I think that would work. I remind people all the time that I'm a businesswoman first, and I do think it can take sometimes 2 years anytime you put somebody in a position to really learn their role, whatever it is. And we've got varied roles. But it seems to me that after about 2 years, people really get into a rhythm and a groove. But you're right, 10, 12 years. That's usually when burnout, if you're doing something of the same for a long time. And also, it keeps ideas fresh. I think that would really, I think, be a really smart thing if we could get to that. Because we see Biden was there for how many years? 47 years. I mean, that's too long, I think. Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I really, really enjoyed hearing from you. And I want to remind our listeners that AMAC works to protect the rights of mature Americans. We are the Association of Mature American Citizens. You don't have to be 50 years old to join. We serve all Americans, and we will continue to work hard to help protect your Social Security. That's an area that we work on. We will work hard on health care. We're going to push against H.R. 1. And we understand that so many people love our country and they love the values that our country was founded on. And, we're here to ensure that our AMAC members, in over 2 million now, that their voice is heard. Congressman, I want to thank you so much for your time, for sharing your insight with AMAC's millions of members, and I wish you the very best of luck, and thank you so much for the good work that you do.
It's been such an honor. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Anytime you would like to get back together, please let me know. And
we look forward to it.
Appreciate you. Fantastic. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Congressman. Have a great day. And for all of you listening, thank you for joining us on AMAC's podcast, Better for America, and we look forward to having you with us again next time.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.